Hey, Will.
Hey Jill, how are you?
I'm good. How was your week?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. Excited to do our weekly rundown.
So, everybody who's tuning in, I'm Jill Berkowitz. I'm the community manager at Clerk Chat. I'm joined today.
By Will, I'm our AI implementation specialist, and we're going to discuss this week in AI.
And we're colleagues, so we kind of love that you guys kind of get to get a sneak peek into our conversations. It's kind of like off the record, but on the record, right? So,
Right.
today we have at least 4 topics to cover today. I did a quick count: the collaboration between OpenAI and media outlets, a survey that I found from Common Sense Media about teen and young adult generative AI usage. And I was actually very shocked by the results, so I can't wait to talk to you about that. AI generated sound effects from 11 Lab, and then the third thumb invention or innovation out of Cambridge University. So earlier this week, our colleague Vlad had shared an image. It wasn't his, it's been circulating around the internet from Google, where the AI had responded with how to handle your cheese sliding off pizza. Did you see that?
I did actually hear, I saw this like on Twitter or X a few weeks ago when it was circulating. Yeah.
Right. So the response, or part of the AI generated response, was you can also add about an eighth cup of non toxic glue to the sauce to give it more tackiness. So it's so funny because the first thing I immediately thought of wasn't how ridiculous it was. It was, can you imagine if someone actually Googled that, get the information, and then literally didn't even bother reading it, copied and pasted it, or some other ridiculous suggestion, and then either put it in a blog post and published it or sent it off to a family member? I mean, somebody eventually would have caught it, but that was the first thing I thought of.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. I think I saw a bit more of a detailed version of it, and it said that Google had obviously, it was copying it from like another website, and I think it was
I
from
actually think Reddit.
Reddit, yeah, Reddit. And someone had kind of said it as like a joke, but Google, the AI had obviously been like, oh, good solution. Yeah.
Right. So I think that brought up the whole question of, can AI sense sarcasm or jokes from real, true questions? And how does it know if, in this instance where someone's asking about a recipe, whether to give it a serious response, an actual response, or that it's something playful that someone's looking around? Obviously, you can prompt the AI for the type of response you want. So I don't know how this one came up as a response for how to resolve your cheese sliding off your pizza, but I just
Yeah,
thought it
I
was
mean,
so funny and I wanted to start with that.
yeah, it's funny. I'm sure it does work. You chuck a bit of glue on there, it'll stop sliding. But yeah,
You could try it. I won't be trying.
yeah, I think I'll put that as well. I think.
Some media companies see OpenAI as the future. So some of the companies partnering with OpenAI include News Corp, Financial Times, Vox Media. I definitely missed some. What I'm understanding from this article that I read is that, one, we already know news articles help AI systems learn, but there have been times where media outlets have said OpenAI has used the content without asking. Like, for example, the New York Times had sued OpenAI and Microsoft, I think 6 months ago, for copyright infringement. My takeaway from this is that OpenAI wants to move toward collaboration and obviously avoid payouts if they're sued. I just often naturally am always thinking of the underdogs, smaller news outlets as an example. Will these partnerships with the bigger news outlets, or those who, and even not all news outlets might not partner with OpenAI anyway, but will the partnerships impact these smaller news outlets in any way? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I saw that OpenAI were partnering with a bunch of big corporations. I saw the Reddit one, and I hadn't heard about Financial Times. But yeah, I think the advantage it will bring to them is they'll be able to pump out more content faster and maybe in like, I'm going to say higher quality, but that's obviously very open to interpretation. Like, does AI actually make an article better quality or, contribute to better research? But I think that's the idea on their side, on the big corporation side, to make their articles better.
Well, it's
But yeah,
interesting. I don't know what your perspective is too. Depending on the AI that you're using, some will actually cite the source that it's pulling from. I don't believe Gemini or ChatGPT do that, but I think Microsoft does.
Yeah, I see like Microsoft's Copilot.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen they can do that as well. I'm sure it'll only be a matter of time, like once ChatGPT can like search the internet currently up to date and that sort of thing, then it will be able to start citing. But to go back to your original question about the smaller news outlets, I think it will be a disadvantage for them. Obviously, these big news outlets have so much power, they have so much money, and they're able to collaborate now with AI. That's obviously advantageous for the big firms. But the flip side of it is that suddenly these smaller news outlets, they can now kind of say, we don't use any AI. This is your real, authentic local news outlet that will give you real stories written by humans,
Mhm.
human opinion. So maybe it's interesting to think like that could start to become kind of a unique selling point of a magazine or a newspaper. I don't know what you think about that.
I think it might differentiate them. I think it depends on the demographic. I'm actually thinking forward into the next article that I want to discuss later. I'm not going to bring it up now, but I saw some statistics from a younger generation's use, and I don't want that to now affect my answer to this question. But I think so many adults at this point have played around with AI, whether they're using it daily or not is different. So I think it's a matter of which news outlets are using AI. Are those news outlets that are using AI all going to share that information and make that public knowledge, or are some just going to use it and not be transparent about it? So I actually think there are a lot of factors that come into play with your question.
We can't simplify it down to just a few things.
But again, I always often go for the underdogs. So this other take of maybe some of the smaller news outlets either won't use AI or are choosing to not partner with AI because they want to really hold ownership over their content. I kind of get that too.
Yeah, and people could start to prefer that.
Yeah, especially if using AI 100% of the time is becoming the norm as opposed to AI by choice.
Yeah.
So, can we tackle this research that I had read about? I think I initially found this through Common Sense Media, which I have used to determine whether a movie is, when my kids were younger, I should say, whether a book or a movie was appropriate. So, they just conducted a survey with Hope Lab and the Center for Digital Thriving at Harvard Graduate School of Education to assess how teens and young adults are using AI. The study shed light on insights about how AI provides broader access to information, streamlining of tasks, enhanced creativity. These are things we all know. And then I'm quoting the article. However, young people also express concerns about potential negative impacts, including job loss, privacy issues, intellectual property theft, misinformation and disinformation, and even AI taking over the world. I kind of zoomed in on the negatives more than I zoomed in on the positives just because it was a much longer list and it was hard to ignore. By the way, the report is available online for anyone to read. I'll link to it in the show notes. But one example of a notable stat, which I happen to mention, half of young people ages 14 to 22 have used generative AI at some point. However, only 4% report being daily users. A couple thoughts. It's hard to really know how accurate people were in their responses for the survey, number one. Would everybody actually admit that they use it every day? I don't know, especially in that age group. Second, let's assume that the percentage is even a little bit higher than 4%. Let's say it's only like 10%. I'm actually kind of surprised.
I mean, me personally, I'm definitely in the 4% that uses it every day. I use it for a lot of different things. And I think a lot of my friends at my age do use it pretty much every day as well.
Do you
I,
it's less of a I didn't mean to interrupt, but do you think it's less of a fascination now than it was, say, 6 months ago? Or do you think it's equally
I think it's probably equally used as much, but people are just more
okay?
used now. And maybe like the hype has kind of died down. So actually, in that sense, maybe a little bit less, but definitely people I know still use it pretty regularly. But just for more mundane things like summarizing an article or rewriting a paragraph in an essay, that sort of thing. But yeah, honestly, only 50% of people in my age group having ever used AI. Like, because yeah, it says here 8% don't know what AI tools are and 41% have never used AI tools. That's like quite shocking. It would be interesting to compare this with the birth of the internet to see after like 2 years of the internet being created, or a similar timeline to where we are with AI now, what percentage of this age group had used the internet and not.
Oh, that's a good point too. All right, Common Sense Media, if you're listening, we think that you should conduct another survey. William is happy to give you the details. But also, now I'm kind of curious. Let's say they did another age bracket, like 25 to 40 or 40 to 65. You know what I mean? I'm just curious what the difference would be, but I also thought 50% was a little low for just
Mm.
having tried it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was low, but then I just compared it in my mind with what I thought the internet would be, and I feel like it's more than what the internet would have been at the inception of the internet. Maybe 50% is a lot.
And also, we forget that certain parts of the world maybe don't have as much access or awareness as we do.
Yeah. Yeah, very good point.
So this next bit of news, I don't know that it's really necessarily news, but I thought this was super cool. And I'm going to rewind before I share this. When I first saw some videos from Sora come out, I wasn't that impressed. I actually thought they were a little creepy. I mean, I thought the concept was kind of cool, but I wasn't like, whoa, that's so amazing. I really didn't feel that way. But I read this article. AI generated sound effects are here. So 11 labs can generate sound effects, short instrumental tracks, soundscapes, some character voices, all from a text prompt. There's even an example video included in the blog post. I was actually super impressed by that. I was curious. And by the way, they partnered with Shutterstock to fine tune. Do you have any first impressions on this? Because I clearly did.
So 11 Labs is known for generating sounds. Their original thing was AI generated voices. I think they've almost got 30 languages that you can generate a voice in. So they've been known for building a model that turns text into sound. And now that you can do that with sound effects, the first thing that pops into my mind was, because when people are making a movie and you sometimes see those clips of people whose job it is to make these sound effects. And they're in like a studio and they'll be like pouring water into something and recording it. Or it'll be some really weird thing that makes this sound effect in a movie. And you're like, oh, that's quite cool. But now, this is the first stepping stone to making that job obsolete, right? Because now one of the producers just searches, create a sound effect that's perfect for this clip. And all of a sudden they've got one. So yeah, that was the first thing that popped into my mind. What were your initial thoughts?
I mean, I immediately compared it to Sora in the video, and I was so much more impressed by the sound effects than I was the video. I'll add, my son isn't into it now, but he was taking DJ classes for a while. And while he wasn't creating his own sound, he was doing a lot of mixing of music. So then I wondered to myself, let's say he was creating his own sounds. He hadn't gotten there yet, but at some point he would have. Well, now in theory, 11 labs can create the sounds. So how might this affect the DJ population?
And actually, that goes hand in hand with a bunch of companies that have started, kind of like the AI Spotify, where you can say, make a 2-minute song that sounds a bit like Taylor Swift, but then has a bit of, rap in there, like that sort of thing. And then it will
Yeah.
create a song for you.
I don't know that I really want to listen to AI generated music, but I could see how a tool like this could be pretty cool if somebody was doing videography, for other purposes.
Or even DJing, like you said, if you're
Right.
like great crafting your mix, your set, and you'll just need something before a big drop, and you're like to AI, like, oh, I need something perfect here, to
Right.
mix.
Maybe my son actually could have benefited from it since he wasn't quite ready to create his own
Mm.
beats. I think that's what they're called. Maybe 11 Labs could have helped him create his own beat.
Yeah, yeah.
That was such a fun one. And then this last one, I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around the third thumb innovation out of Cambridge University. So Danny Claude, a collaborator within Professor Tamara Makin's lab from the Medical Research Council, Cognition and Brain Sciences Unit at the University of Cambridge, developed what they're calling the third thumb. It's a robotic thumb added to the hand, but controlled by the foot. It's supposed to help people do tasks they normally wouldn't be able to do. maybe allows someone to carry or grasp more and has a bit of a different movement range.
You're right, it's controlled by the feet, and I think if you move your left foot, it's like here, it makes it go up and down, and if you move your like right toe, it makes it like curl inwards and outwards, like that way. And the ability that people have with this thumb, like how quickly they can start using it to like pick up a glass or do things with this extra thumb, it blew my mind. And then I thought like that's only using your feet. Imagine once we start looking at neurological activity now, the possibilities of that are really big. And relating to prosthetics or amputees who have replacement
You
limbs.
know, I didn't even think of it from that perspective. I was about to say that you are so much more fascinated by the third thumb than I was. However, when they tested it, 98% of people were able to perform the assigned tasks. So maybe they said, use the third thumb to pick up a block and put it in the bucket. 98% of the people were able to do it quickly, which means they kind of understood this concept of having your foot or your toes make the thumb move. And I thought that was very cool. So
Yeah,
if I had fast forwarded that, as you said, into something related to physical therapy or someone who maybe needs the third thumb medically, that is really cool kind of direction that they could go.
the only problem with it is you can't use it while you're walking, otherwise it would just be constantly like moving everywhere.
Yes, true. But they may advance it, like you said. It could end up being directed by brain or maybe AI.
The other thing that I thought of was these prosthetic hands that I'm not sure they're commonplace yet, but they can interpret your brain signal. You can move them based on just how you can control your normal hand. So yeah, this kind of reminded me of that and taking it to the next level almost.
You know, I had a thought, well, it's very cool that we can have these really candid conversations. I think it's less about sharing the news and more about us talking about it and having these open discussions, whether or not we agree on some AI effectiveness. I think it's a way to learn about AI, to help other people learn about AI, to educate everyone what's going on in the world related to AI, because as we both know, it's clearly not going anywhere.
Yeah, and discussing, it's like we just hear stuff in the news and then we have a conversation about it. Everyone should be doing that.
I can't wait to share this out with everybody. We will include links to whatever articles we have read this week in the show notes so you guys can join in on our conversation.
Great, thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Will.